Qingshan town was originally an ordinary town located halfway up the mountain. Usually, there are few outsiders, but at this moment, it has become turbulent because of Kiguo's exam. Next, Fenghua County examinee, Xia Fan. The invigilator read with the list. Xia Fan, who was named by his name, walked out of the team and handed his wooden sword and package. Two assistants immediately took the package and unzipped it, carefully checking the contents. Clothes, 2 sets, compliant. Pills, 1 bag, compliance. Pick up paper, stack, compliance. Money. When the money bag was found, one person put it upside down in his hand, and couldn't help showing a surprised look, less than 5 taels. A few chuckles suddenly came from behind Xia Fan. Although his voice was suppressed very low, he still vaguely heard words such as poor ghosts and soil buns. As long as you don't exceed the limit, you can bring as many as you want. The invigilator didn't respond much, as if he had seen many similar scenes. Press your fingerprints here and cross the bridge. Xia Fan arched his hands and crossed the small suspension bridge connecting the inside and outside of the town. Only then did he really enter the examination room. And the candidates in the front line have already run across the street. It seemed that they had the same idea as himself. Xia Fan secretly said that when he came to an unfamiliar place, the first thing he had to do was to get acquainted with the situation in this place before he could deal with the content of the next assessment. Half an hour later, after visiting the town, he finally had a general understanding of the exam room. This town is much smaller than he thought. It is more appropriate to say that it is not a town than a village. It is located in a remote location, backed by mountains, and surrounded by rift valleys. The access to the outside world is only a suspension bridge made of hemp rope and wooden planks. The surrounding vegetation is lush, and there are big trees in the sky, and you can smell the fragrance of moist soil when you walk on the road. If you change the age, this isolated residence is undoubtedly a superb view in the eyes of some people. It is no problem as a tourist attraction close to nature, but at this moment, isolation means poverty and backwardness. 4 crisscrossing mud roads roughly divide the town into a tic-tac-toe. The houses are less than 30 buildings, most of which are bungalows with thatched roofs, and some have been abandoned for many years. Obviously, its scale is shrinking with the years. Is a little like a town in the center of the tic-tac-toe. There are at least 2 floors of blue brick houses along the road, as well as a hotel and a tea house. Here, naturally, it has become the most lively area in Qingshan town. This giant Tai, bother, suddenly someone patted Xia Fan on the shoulder. Are you from Fenghua County too? Xia Fan turned around and looked around, only to see a man who was slightly fat and his age was looking at him with a smile on his face, even with some expectations in his eyes. Yes, I don't know if you are. Hey, fellow. The other party seemed to be relieved. My name is Wei Wushuan, I was 2 or 3 behind you before, and I just heard the examiner's question. That's it. Seeing Xia Fan raising his eyebrows, Wei Wushuan quickly waved his hand again. I didn't think there was any problem with only carrying half a bag of money. After all, not everyone is a disciple, but those disciples of the martial art are high profile and like to look down on people. To be honest, I hate them too tightly. By the way, should we go in and have a drink and talk? He glanced at the tea house. I'll please you for this meal. Is this self-acquaintance or is it a casual dedication? Thinking that there was nothing wrong, Xia Fan agreed, and he was also a little curious about what the other party was doing. Sat down at an empty table on the second floor. Wei Wushuan skillfully placed a pot of green tea, added a plate of boiled peanuts and a plate of raw pork ears. Obviously, he is also a frequent visitor to restaurants. It seems ordinary, but Xia Fan knows that this is definitely not the normal life of ordinary people. Those who can go to restaurants in this era have some spare money at home. At least he has never played. This can be regarded as experiencing life from another angle. You are welcome, Wei Wushuan gestured to please, if you still want to eat, just tell me. This is enough. Xia Fan poured himself a cup of tea. The money is limited, it's best to save some money. I don't know how long this exam will last. Yes. When it comes to the exam, Wei Wuxuan's expression is obviously wilted. I heard that although the admission rate for Shikao is not low, the advantages and differences are different. If it is rated as inferior, it is better not to be selected. After all, that's a desperate job. It's just, hey, you and I are from retail investors, so how can you compare to those noble disciples? Every time I hear Shikao, an indescribable feeling will always rise in Xia Fan's heart. Although he has long accepted that this is reality, he still cannot ignore the strangeness caused by the collision of two common senses. That's right, in this world, the various anomalies that were only active in ghost stories and legends have become a common phenomenon. It definitely does not exist in a certain mountain tomb or remote wasteland, but it really affects people. All aspects of life. In order to deal with these evil events, each dynasty set up a privy council to select relevant talents to protect the safety of one party. And the method of selection is public examination. All those who are admitted are alchemists. Not only do they have official status, their treatment is the same as that of ordinary officials. Therefore, over time, Shikao gradually became the third largest national unified examination after scientific and martial arts examinations, and because the Privy Council was not among the 6 departments and was under the direct control of the emperor, its momentum in recent years has been above Wukao. Like the scientific examination, the scholarship examination is held once every 3 years, but the format is not divided into different levels of selection in autumn and spring. Anyone who wishes can apply for registration before the summer university examination. Passing the identity review is equivalent to obtaining a standard exam qualifications. The exam usually lasts for a few days, after which the level can be determined. According to the news Xia Fan heard before, the admission rate for the Shikao is halfway, which seems to be much more relaxed than the scientific test. However, considering the duties of the alchemist, this is also reasonable. After all, the number of people participating in the examination is much lower than the scientific examination. At the same time, it is a 3-year examination. If the requirements are increased, the Privy Council will inevitably lead to a shortage of personnel in the Privy Council, which will affect the safety of various places. It's just that the exam always scores high and low. Even if the alchemist who barely passes the test has official status, the place he is assigned will not be much better. The problem is that even if the local officials are poor, they will live a little bit poorer, and they will always have a chance to turn over if they gradually become more senior. But unlike the Privy Council, it is inevitable that anyone has to deal with all kinds of visions, and it is not surprising if he accidentally died on duty. With this difference, it is no wonder that Wei Wuxuan is worried about his ranking. The scholarship test is an active registration and voluntary participation. If you don't come, won't you be free from these troubles? Xia Fan said disapprovingly. The other party is obviously not the kind of person who needs to take a fight. He has some spare money in his pocket at any time, and he can still go to the restaurant on weekdays. This kind of person can live quite well even if he is not an official, and there is no need for risk. I'm not afraid of Xiantai's jokes. I was driven by my father. Wei Wuxuan grinned helplessly. He said that he is only a businessman when he does business well. Compared to a serious official, it's 1,000 miles away. If I didn't come, I would be ashamed of the ancestors, the talent bestowed by God, and sorry for the rice I ate. Of course, the main reason is the root in his hand. Leather whip. Xia Fan couldn't help but twitched the corners of his mouth. You shouldn't be the eldest son of the family. Do you know this too? Wei Wuxuan drank a sullen tea. Father with 3 children and 2 daughters, I am the second child. Seems to be real. However, he himself is not much better. During his stay in Fenghua County, his master not only lost his entanglement, but because he wanted to recover the loss quickly, he lost a sum of money in gambling, almost losing everyone. Now that the master is being held by the casino, waiting for him to get the alchemist and redeem him with the salary. It is as shameful as it is. If it weren't for the fact that the cheap master picked him up as an orphan and took care of him for more than 10 years, Xia Fan really wanted to abandon him and leave. He shook his head, set aside this unbearable memory for the time being, and decided to go straight to the topic. What do you want to talk about when you ask me to drink tea? No, it's nothing. Wei Wuxian was taken aback for a moment, then scratched his head. I think since Xi and Tai are both from Fenghua County, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com might be able to make a company. Take care of each other. If Xi and Tai is in trouble, I can also help. That's it. Xia Fan asked calmly. Of course, I don't mean anything else. After being looked directly at for a moment, Wei Wuxian coughed dryly. Well, it would be better if you and I can help each other in the next taxi exam. Naturally, it is not breaking the rules. Under the circumstances, I never had the idea of bribing Xiant Tai with a bowl of tea. You mean, cooperation? Yes, cooperation. Wei Wuxian nodded again and again. I think this Shikao is very different from the other two exams. Collaboration may not be considered cheating. Why do you see? Xia Fan slowly took a sip of tea. Take Kaiho Wei as an example. When you go to the examination center, you have to search your body before sending it in. There are compartments in the courtyard. Once you enter, you can't make noise at will, let alone talk to others. In fact, even go to the toilet. It must be accompanied by an invigilator. But look here, Wei Wuxian looked around the tea house. We are already in the examination room, but we can't help whispering, and we can even talk while eating. There are also those in the same robe, he said to a big table in the center. I noticed that they have been together since they were in line. They are all family children, and we should know some news that we don't know. If it is like as in the scientific examination, everyone is a competitor. They shouldn't be unprepared for their peers, but it doesn't seem to be the case now. I think the examination may allow everyone to pass the examination, and it's a group of people. The advantage is greater than that of one person. Xia Fan couldn't help raising her eyebrows. This guy seems a bit dumb, but he didn't expect his observation ability to be unexpectedly good. For a teenager who has not yet reached the championship, this is already a rare thing. Brother Xia, what do you think? Wei Wuxian couldn't help asking when he didn't respond. Xia Fan smiled slightly. I'm thinking, instead of guessing, it's better to ask someone you know. Hey? Who knows? He raised his hand and made a move towards the shop. Xiaoer, little er, please come here. Hey, come on. Xia Fan tilted her head. Look, people who know are here. Wei Wuxian couldn't help but open his mouth wide, and said with a look of surprise, do you think, the second person in this tea house can know the inside story of Shi Kao? Actually, I was very surprised from the beginning. Why is there a hotel and a tea house in the center of a remote village built halfway up a mountain? He put down his teacup and slowly expressed the doubts in his heart. Neither close to the big city nor on the main road of transportation. If it weren't for the exam, who would have nothing to run here to shop and stay? It is a pure loss-making business. No one in this world should be willing to do it. Wei Wuxian was also stunned. You seem to make sense. Looking at this blue brick floor, it has been decades since it is not to be said. It is not like a temporary build. The reason why this shop can last for so long must be supported by other sources of income. I don't care about the profit and loss of the book. Guess who invested money in such a place? Could it be, is the Privy Council which is responsible for holding the examination? But even so, what does it have to do with the shop? Xiaoer? Wei Wuxian was still puzzled. The scientific expedition only requires a paper and a pen, and the martial arts exam only requires an open space and weapons. There is basically no limit to the location of the two. As for the shikao, you can't find a random place, right? Otherwise, neither will the Privy Council. I will take a lot of effort to gather everyone to this remote town. Xia Fan said in a good manner. After all, in terms of office and administrative costs, going to a big city is always the best option, which is why the two exams are the last one. The reason is determined to be in Jiangyi. Administrative, cost. Repeated the fellows difficultly. Ah, don't care about the words, you just understand it as the difference between the cost and the profit required to conduct one time. He stretched out 2 fingers. In short, it is not difficult to infer 2 points from the above. Certainly, the number should not be too much, and to maintain such an examination room, a continuous supply of money is required. Although the Privy Council is extremely important, they cannot spend money arbitrarily. They have maintained Qingshan Township for a long time, and certainly not just for this exam. In other words, there should have been many scholarship exams here. Xia Fan in the end, he concluded, if Xiao is a local, then he should have experienced similar battles. Wei Wuxuan could not speak for a while. 2 guest officials, I don't know what to order. During the discussion, the shop Xiao also came to their table. Xia Fan first ordered a portion of braised beef, then changed the topic, pretending to ask casually, by the way, how long have you been in this tea house? Returning officer, I've been running errands here when I was a child, and it's been more than 10 years if I didn't say it. Xiao replied enthusiastically. Usually business shouldn't be so hot, right? You are right, the last time I was so busy was probably 5 or 6 years ago. People like us were also here. Wei Wuxuan asked quickly. The other party smiled, but didn't answer immediately. Xia Fan suddenly, it seems that this is rich experience. He coughed twice and pointed to his waist. Wei Wuxuan was taken aback for a moment before he could react. He took a half-size silver from his pocket and put it on the table. Xiao Er suddenly opened his eyebrows and smiled, swiping his sleeves to accept the money. It should be about the same. I remember that the topics they talked about are also shikao, spells, etc. Of course, I don't quite understand the specifics. Wei Wuxuan suddenly became excited, then do you know the content of their assessment? The other party shut up again. No need to be prompted this time, the fellow villager has already pushed another silver horn into his hand. To be honest, I'm not quite clear. Xiao Le said, I don't dare to touch the things they said. And most of those people are late at night activities, and they also specialize in drilling back into the mountains. Everyone can't even avoid it. Why would you come up and ask what's going on? If someone in the town knows, it's probably those old hunters. It's said that someone asked them to be their guides and earned more than 10 taels in one night. While Wei Wuxuan was about to put on his pocket again, Xia Fan held him down. Okay, go ahead. Good. The shop Xiao responded. Wait, I still want to look around. Xia Fan interrupted Wei Wuxuan. The latter realized that several people had noticed the situation here. Although they still pretended to eat and drink, their glances became more frequent. Xiao Er, this way. Seeing Xiao Er turned around, a table of people called out. Look, there is no need to spend all the money on this. Xia Fan squeezed a peanut and threw it into his mouth. Since others are willing to pay for the money, it is better to give them the opportunity, as long as we can be sure here. It's not the first time that a scholar exam is held, so it's almost the same to ask anyone. What's more, we can think of this, and the Privy Council can definitely think that the invigilator does not prohibit us from communicating with locals, so we must be sure not to leak the questions in advance. It may be detrimental to us instead. Wei Wuxuan frowned and thought, then suddenly raised his head, you mean money? 12 taels of silver is not a small amount, but it is definitely not too much. Xia Fan nodded. Calculated in terms of the purchasing power of grain, 1 or 2 silvers in this era are about 500 yuan. 12 taels of cash is a huge sum of money that he and the cheap master can't get out, but to the disciples of the big family, it's just a drop in the bucket. Why can I only carry this amount before entering the town? I'm afraid it has something to do with the exam. Didn't that person mention it just now? A local guide will cost you more than 10 taels. This is enough for several people to pool together. Number of. This is a place I didn't expect. Wei Wuxian sighed for a long time. I wonder who the master of Xiantai is. Superior. Xia Fan couldn't help but think of the image of a cheap Mr. a middle-aged uncle who said that you were black in the hall, and I can help you solve problems. If you don't get it together, you still need the disciples to put it in front of you. Do you have any misunderstandings about the experts? But Xiantai's knowledge really made me amazed. Since I was young, I am very sensitive to money, but I am still a lot worse than you. Wei Wuxian admired. If it is not the reason for respecting the teacher, then you must have been before. Wandered through many places. Xia Fan couldn't help but want to laugh. He did stay in a lot of places with the cheap master, but it was definitely not a roaming, but a purposeless wandering. If you count the experience of the 2 lives, that's even more. It's just that he naturally wouldn't tell him this. In addition, the place that made Xia Fan noticed was not only the tea house. Such as the reaction of the locals. Qingshan town has only 100 or 200 residents at most, while the number of candidates is as many as 400. If a large group of outsiders floods into this enclosed area, it will inevitably bring resistance and defense. But after walking around, he found that the local people's performance was too natural. What should they do, and even greeted the candidates, as if, has been used to such things. Does your house open a shop? The Big Bowl food shop is my storefront. Wei Wuxian replied. Puff, Xia Fan was almost choked. Isn't this the best grain shop in Fenghua County? And the store will occasionally hand out some relief porridge, and master often takes advantage of it. Those who can open a grain shop in Kiguo, even if they are not a family clan, are not ordinary merchants and vendors. Have you seen Xiantai? It's strange that I haven't seen it. It's the most central location in the county. Xia Fan gave him a white look, and in his heart he had included the other party as the enemy of the bourgeoisie. Well, it is. Hey, when the exam is over, I must ask Brother Xia to have a good meal in Fenghua County. No, this meal is enough. Xia Fan stood up and arched his hands at him. Thank you. Wait, Wei Wuxian didn't react for a while. You don't want to be with me? Cooperation. He shook his head. You are actually right. Those sects and disciples of aristocratic families have far greater advantages than individual investors. Even if they can pass the exam, the ranking will not be too high. So for you, the most a good choice is to fail deliberately. Not entering the Privy Council will have little effect on you, and because you fail the examination, your father should have nothing to say. Back in Fenghua County, you are still the second young master at home, and you will live forever. Worry-free, at least better than assigning to a certain town and eventually dying from a certain evil. So hurry up and go home, Xia Fan said, waving his hand. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Isn't it good to be a rich second generation with a dull life? He could see that Wei Wuxian did not have the determination to pass the exam. The latter's face was visibly flushed. For a moment, he thought the other party would become angry and yelled at him, but in the end Wei Wuxian managed to endure it. This is not common. Xia Fan secretly praised boys between the ages of 15 and 16 to adulthood. The most important thing is face. Can lose everything, but face cannot be lost. To put it bluntly, love to be strong, like to be horny. However, the other party was not convinced, and looked at his heart. After a while, Wei Wuxian said, "What about you? You are as difficult as me to get a good ranking, are you not afraid?" "Who said that? I care about my life." Then why? Because of ignorance. Xia Fan sighed softly. Ignorance. Wei Wuxian was surprised, he really couldn't connect the person in front of him with ignorance. Because I don't know anything about this new world, I want to learn more. Xia Fan knows that the sense of violation in his heart comes from the opposition between reality and common sense, and the feedback from an unfamiliar environment. It would be fine if he was just an ordinary person in his life, but he was talented. Paying off debts for the cheap master was just an introduction. Even if there was no such thing, he would take this step sooner or later. As the Privy Council that manages all visions, it is undoubtedly an ideal platform. Besides, for him who has received systematic education, seeking knowledge and solving puzzles has become an instinct carved into the soul. But even if these are said, people in this world probably won't understand it. He waved his hand, turned and walked out. However, Xia Fan didn't leave the tea house directly, but stopped at the corner of the stairs. He waited until the shop Xiao'er sent a new order of braised beef before calling him and putting the beef into his pocket. Facing the strange request of the guest officer, Xiao'er didn't have too much doubts. After all, he was sitting at the same table with Wei Wuxian before, and the latter was still sitting in his seat. After packing the beef, Xia Fan came out of the tea house unhurried. Line this way, even lunch was saved. Anyway, my fellow villagers said don't be polite, order what you want to eat, and he also believed that Wei Wuxian would not mind this plate of braised beef that disappeared out of thin air. To be honest, he was not bad in his evaluation of this young boy, his temperament was not bad, and he could face himself in shame and annoyance. This is rare. Besides, his family background is quite solid. If he wins, he will be in Fenghua County. Life must be much better. It's a pity that what he said was the truth. Since he took the exam because of family coercion, there was no need to take that risk. Master has repeatedly told him that dealing with evil is a serious matter. If you don't make up your mind and make perfect preparations, you should never intervene easily. Judging from the style of the cheap master who only deals with little ghosts and little charms, and avoids them as soon as he meets the alchemist of the Privy Council, he has not lied to himself. In the afternoon, the invigilator finally summoned everyone to the center of the town and informed the content of the assessment. The theme is unexpectedly simple, as long as you fill up a bottle of spirit fire source within a limited time. The so-called spiritual fire is commonly known as the ghost fire. Its source can be used as the release medicinal material for several alchemy after being dried and ground. It is relatively easy to prepare. Of course, Xia Fan would not stand up and say that this phenomenon should be called phosphorus fire. It burns phosphine, which is produced from decayed human bones because those powders can indeed trigger some magical phenomena and are repeatable. The latter is the most important creed in scientific experiments. His common sense does not work here, or it is operating in another form that he does not know. Because the spirit fire is not rare, it is easy to collect, just bring a shovel and dig down. Therefore, as soon as the content of the main test came out, there was a commotion in the crowd. No wonder the candidates are surprised that even ordinary people, as long as they are courageous enough, can easily do this. The invigilator ignored everyone's comments and uncovered the red silk beside him, revealing a sign and a long table underneath. There are a lot of porcelain vases on the table, which are obviously the containers used by Shikao. The ink on the sign is a further explanation of the assessment rules, but overall it is also very concise, with only 3 items. 1. The test time is 7 days, during which time you cannot leave Qingshan town. 2. It is forbidden to interfere in the daily life of the villagers. 3. Don't murder the same candidates. Candidates who violate any of the above rules will be directly judged as unqualified. The invigilator said loudly, then, the 10th exam for Dakiguo will begin. I wish you all the best. Turn around and leave it all. Explain the meaning to everyone. Wait, 7 days. Everyone was in an uproar. What can be done in 1 day, why should I stay for so long? Wouldn't everyone be qualified? Just take care of him, take the bottle first. This sentence seemed to remind everyone. The scene became extremely chaotic for a while. The ones in the front couldn't get out with the bottles, and the ones behind couldn't get in. Even in the process of pushing, several porcelain bottles slipped off the table and fell to pieces. Candidates who haven't gotten it are afraid that they will be disqualified because they don't have a bottle. They will push harder, and someone who accidentally falls over will turn into a stampede. Stop it all! Suddenly, a crisp voice resounded through the audience. I saw a woman leaping onto the long table, pulling out the wooden sword on her waist, and making a pose that was about to slash. Whoever takes another step, I will break all these bottles. The commotion was suddenly stagnant. No one even questioned it because they did find that there was no rule prohibiting damage to the container. Once she really did that, would it be angered by the public to say that they could not complete the assessment, but it was a certainty. Sister, what are you doing? It was a young man who wore the same clothes as the woman who stood up anxiously. Of course it is to maintain order. The woman gave a nice smile, and then nodded the sword towards the crowd. The one over there, please help the person who fell. And you, both help. People. Why should I listen to you? Someone said not. Hey! The girl pressed the sword in her hand a few points. The pressure instantly shifted to the protesters. Under the scorching eyes of everyone, the named candidates obediently stretched out their hands towards the faller. Very good. Others, come forward one by one and come to me to pick up the bottles. Don't worry, there are still a few boxes of bottles behind this table, the number is definitely enough. Brothers and sisters, don't stand there, come and help me. In a few words, a possible trampling will be eliminated without a trace. Being squeezed in the crowd and unable to move, Xia Fan was finally able to ease his breath. While following the flow of people, he looked at the woman curiously. She looked not tall, at most 15 or 6 years old, with a face still not getting rid of the childishness, but already has the foundation of beauty. In particular, a pair of big eyes are particularly agile, just like holding a clear spring. And the brocade robe she wore was equally eye-catching. The light blue fabric is very valuable at a glance, and a pair of feathers are embroidered on the shoulders, and the lines are rooted in the roots, as if they are real. Looking at the candidates who wore the same clothes as her, we knew that these people were the disciples of aristocratic family that Wei Wuxian called. Are they, from the Luo family in Yuzhu? Suzako Xuanjiu, you should not be wrong. Hearing people around him whispering, Xia Fan couldn't help but interject, hey, this Xiant Tai, is the Luo family famous? Have you never even heard of the Luo family? The man glanced at him suspiciously. They are big scholars. Every time there are qualified candidates, it is nothing to them. The top 3 will basically have a place in the Luo family. By the way, I heard before that there are a lot of talented disciples of the Luo family, and one of the girls is even more talented. Is that she? The other person answered. No way, this move is a bit too reckless, not like a genius. Didn't you see her brother is also extremely dissatisfied with this move? Indeed, if she is not from the Luo family, this time the exam will end here. Oh, after offending so many people, even if she is a disciple of the family, she may not be safe in the next few days. Xia Fan disagrees with this statement. The reason why the other party can instantly control the scene has nothing to do with her identity. The key is that she has grasped the candidate's fate so that she can use a few words to frighten everyone into motion. Even if it is an ordinary person, as long as he notices the key points, he can do this. With someone who maintains order, the flow in the field has become faster. After a while, Xia Fan, who was at the back, received his porcelain bottle. At this time, the girl had already got off the table and was called aside by her brother. Judging from the expressions of the two, there seemed to be a bit of dispute, but the man's face was not more angry, but worried. When passing by them far, Xiaofan also heard a few conversations, and obviously the two did not deliberately lower their voices. You should be aware that it is not only our family who participated in the exam. The Fei family and the Fang family are looking at us, and the people in the palace. Brother, I know. Then why are you doing this? We will all enter the Privy Council, and the biggest responsibility of the Privy Council is to maintain the order of the world. It is fine to adapt in advance. What's more, when she said this, she turned her head, as if she knew Xiaofan. I could hear these words and smiled at him. At that time, we were in the center of the vortex, and if we blindly stood by, we might also be affected by the chaos. It seems that the little girl is also very sensitive in 5 senses. Xiaofan added another after her insightful evaluation. Since you don't lower the volume, I am not eavesdropping either. After returning a straight smile, he turned his attention back to the content of the exam. The porcelain bottle in my hand is pure white, and there is a burning seal of the Privy Council on the bottom. It should be specially prepared for Shikao. It is about the size of a mineral water bottle. It obviously requires a lot of bone meal to fill it up. No, spirit fire source of. Considering that the number of people participating in this examination is about 400, the total amount of the source of spiritual fire at UU reading www.yuncha.com is a bit staggering. If there is no large cemetery, it is really difficult to get it. The problem is that Qingshan town is so big, even if the residents are buried, it is estimated that it will not make up the number required for the examination. Of course, since it is an exam, it is normal for a part to be eliminated. It seems that the first test in the assessment should be the candidate's information gathering ability. Xiaofan also noticed that when most of the referees were still questioning the content of the test, a small group of people had quietly left the central area. I'm afraid these people have realized that whoever can find the spiritual fireplace of Qingshan town first can seize the opportunity, and asking the locals or asking them to lead the way is a good choice. But after thinking for a while, he finally chose to go to the hotel first. If there is only 1 day for the exam, then he must have followed this small group of people, but the invigilator gave it 7 days. In other words, the next board and lodging are likely to be taken care of by themselves, and the small-scale hotel is not enough for everyone to live in. It's not bad if you can fill 100. It can be seen that guest rooms must be a scarce resource, and most candidates estimate that they will have to live in the broken houses outside. As a comer with rich wandering experience, Xiaofan knows the difference between a comfortable house and one that can only shelter from wind and rain. If the harassment of mosquitoes just makes people sleepless, then all kinds of poisonous insects and snakes are a real threat. Moreover, they are now on the mountainside, and the surrounding area is covered by forest. The temperature and humidity of day and night may be completely different due to a heavy rain. In case of a cold, let alone insisting on completing the exam, it would be difficult to even go back alive. So he decided to rent a house first. Facts prove that Xiaofan's choice is correct. When he mentioned this to the store, he realized that there were only a handful of rooms that were still vacant. Among them, the big head had been reserved by the children of the family, and the rest were either the first-class wing rooms with high prices, or the small rooms on the ground floor with poor ventilation and lighting. Room. In addition, even the smallest single bedroom is charged as much as 1 or 2 silver a day. This price is similar to that of a large inn in Jiangyi, and it seems to have an attitude of killing guests. Xiaofan now finally understands why the invigilator should write not to interfere in the daily life of the villagers in the examination rules. If this kind of black shop moves outside, I'm afraid it will be smashed in a few days. According to this line of thought, it is speculated that the 3 meals a day provided by the store may also be scenic price. If you don't plan carefully, you will not be able to end the exam. The disciples of the Daemon School are not short of money, but under the restrictions of the rules, silver has also become an important resource. Whether to use it to maintain their own good condition or to exchange information, it is up to the examinee to judge. Xia Fan found that he seemed to understand the thinking of the test organizer. Compared with the scientific examinations you ask me to answer, or the martial arts examinations when you pick up weapons, the Shikao is obviously more focused on the comprehensive ability of the candidates. It is more free, but there are more things to consider, and the answer is not only the only solution. As long as it does not violate the rules, it can do anything. For people of this age, this kind of test method may be very strange, but for Xia Fan, it is not surprising he prefers this kind of method that depends on individual performance more than simply testing the ability of spells. He took out $2.50 and directly booked a THRE a day house, plus dinner tonight. Hurrying from Fenghua County to Qingshan Town can be described as a rush all the way. Now that there is plenty of time, it is better to take a good night's rest and restore the state to perfection. Back to the room, Xia Fan couldn't help but curl his lips. It is worthy of the house that everyone picked up. I don't know whether it has a size or not. A narrow bed and a wooden table are all the furniture. The floor is slightly higher, almost 3 meters above the ground, so that the windows are open so high that you can't reach it without stepping on the table. You can't even think about enjoying the outside scenery while practicing. But the room as a whole is very clean. There are no cobwebs in the corners of the beams and no dust at the foot of the bed. It is undoubtedly much better than those unmaintained thatched houses. It seems that the Privy Council's money is not in vain. Another advantage is that it is located at the end of the aisle on the first floor, on the corner of the entire hotel, which is considered the quietest place in the store, very suitable for spiritual practice. Thinking of this, Xia Fan simply put down the package and climbed into bed to meditate. Since he was adopted by the Chief Master, this kind of training has never stopped. No matter how hot, cold, rainy, or snowy, it has been 15 years. This is also the way to get started in the world, inducing air into the body. It is very cliché to say, but the ancestors believed that the universe was first opened, chaos turned into two, the most important thing is accumulation, and the sinking is the dead thing. The light is qi, which floats all over the world and condenses into living beings. Although living things are born with qi, they also lose the vitality of qi. Therefore, if you want to strengthen yourself, you must remaster the method of incorporation into qi, so that it can continuously wash itself before re-establishing contact with qi. This set of theories is quite similar to the theory that Dao produces one life, two produces three, and three life all things. It seems extremely idealistic, but the problem is that qi does exist. In fact, whether or not you can perceive qi is the prerequisite for entering the alchemist threshold. Xia Fan still remembers the night when he saw qi under the guidance of the master under the sky full of stars. Suddenly something more striking than the stars appeared. They were not like clouds and mist, but more like another kind of stars. The spots of light flickered with each other, fluttered with the wind, densely packed, countless. Only when they are far away can they be connected to form a qi state. Is the day when his original common sense was shattered. A series of questions came to mind, like an erupting volcano. He almost tried his best to prevent these questions that were obviously beyond the age range from blurting out. And he knew in his heart that even the master might not be able to give a satisfactory answer. Since then, Xia Fan has invested a lot of energy in cultivation. I meditate day after day, even if I am hungry, I don't leave to practice. I learn how to draw talisman, learn everything about alchemist knowledge. Even the Chief Master, who is not very caring about everything, was shocked by his performance. He also said that the capable people in this world are geniuses who do not know how much, but they can have such perseverance and understanding when they were young. Can't pick one. Only Xia Fan knows that he has nothing to do with genius. Comprehension comes from systematic education, and perseverance is only the companion of age. Yes, he once lived in a completely different world, and everything about that side in his memory is vivid. It's just that he can't remember how he came to this era. There does not seem to be a clear boundary between the two, as if it was a blink of an eye, and as if a long time has passed, when he opened his eyes again, he had become an orphan rolling in the mud. Even the name Xiafan was taken by him from past memories. Fortunately, the cheap master did not delve into this point. Probably he thinks that it is not too rare for a 3-year-old child to remember the name given by his parents. With the ability to learn one step ahead, Xiafan quickly gained an overall understanding of the world. Because living beings are born from qi, it means that consciousness is born before the body. Similarly, after the body dies, consciousness will not necessarily return to the state of qi. In some special circumstances, consciousness can exist independently, or evolve into something else, such as sprites and ghosts. If left untreated, they will continue to grow in the air and eventually harm the world. Although Xiafan hasn't seen a monster that can really harm a place, he has also solved some small evils with Master, confirming that they are not folk stories. In addition, he has been able to truly feel the changes in his body since he has practiced Qian training. Whether it is strength, reaction, vision, and hearing, they are far better than ordinary people. In other words, if it weren't for these changes, he really wouldn't have been able to wander all the way with Master in an era when the medical level was poor and he might die in a rain, and he would live tenaciously to this age. This kind of improvement visible to the naked eye can be said to further stimulate his motivation to practice. If weight loss with a reward for every sweat is the world's least disappointing investment, then exercises that can increase the limit of the body are obviously more worthy of attention. After entering the training state, Xiafan felt that those tiny stars were merging with him. Through them, his consciousness seemed to have an infinite extension space. Each breath seemed to come from himself and from world. This sitting for several hours. After eating the dinner delivered by the store, he continued to return to the Aaron training state, which lasted until late at night. Unfortunately, you need to concentrate when you feel the breath. It is not a substitute for rest, nor can you train while sleeping, so you still have to close your eyes obediently when you fall asleep. Just half asleep and half awake, Xiafan suddenly felt a little strange. He opened his eyes abruptly, but found that the window hanging high above his head was opened somehow, revealing a blood-red light and shadow from outside the window. What happened? He grabbed the wooden sword in his hand, stepped on the table cautiously, stood on his toes and looked out the window. I saw a round of red moon rising above the dome, dyeing the earth into scarlet. At the same time, there was an abnormal change in the small town. There were many soil packs on the ground, and these soil packs were pushed a little bit by bit, and bones crawled out from the ground, making a terrifying cry. Xiafan couldn't help being taken aback. This scene seems to be familiar. And those skeleton monsters, no matter how they look, reveal a touch of cuteness. Wait, cute? One of the skeletons found it, turned around and jumped up, rushing towards the window. The next moment, Xiafan sat up in shock and found that he was still lying on the bed. Is this a dream? If it is a dream, it would be too real. Both the clarity and the sound feel far exceed the dream state, and I can remember all the details even after waking up. He unconsciously raised his head and looked out the window, then his heart tightened slightly. The window was indeed opened. Read www.yuyuganshu.com, and there was something more in the window. It took him a few seconds to adapt to the dark environment before distinguishing the outline of the black shadow. It was a figure sitting by the window, and his eyes were focused on him. The reason for saying this is because in the pitch black, the most conspicuous are the golden eyes that reflect the weak light. Xiafan realized in an instant that this strange dream was related to the person in front of him. Could it be, you are also a picnic fan? Picnic? What is that wrong? Why are you not afraid? Unexpectedly, the other party responded quickly, and the voice was actually a female, even though the tone sounded cold. Why should I be afraid of a group of Kversion skeletons? Xiafan didn't know how to answer. However, the other party was willing to speak, and he was slightly relieved. If the visitor is full of malice, he shouldn't wait until he opens his eyes again. He fumbled, took out the fire folds from the clothes at the foot of the bed, blew out the sparks and lit the candles on the table. The dim flames instantly dispelled the twilight in the room and also let him see the other side. The person who came was not a human being. This was the first recognition in Xia Fan's heart. Although she does look like a woman, the pricked ears on the top of her head are too eye-catching. If the other party is not a fan, this kind of mixed with non-human characteristics is generally called, or demon. Dog? Xia Fan asked tentatively. No respond. Cat. The eyes that can reflect light at night are really like cats. Is still silent. Wolf. He guessed again. Enough, it's a fox. Her voice finally fluctuated. Really? Excuse me, the several branches of the canine family are more similar, I really can't distinguish clearly. Xia Fan smiled and shrugged, but a big wave was already in her heart. My god, he actually met a fox demon. Master once said that demons are considered to be the less harmful type of evil. The reason is that they have their own thoughts and know how to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. Therefore, most of the demons will stay away from human settlements and try not to deal with people. Therefore, there are very few records about them. Most of the folk stories are only word-of-mouth stories, which are innumerable. At present, it is only known that they do exist and are based on the alienation of various animals. Of course, Master's original description was not so polite, but directly called it livestock, poultry, and beast, which is the dirty part of the air, and the appearance of the world's decline. Canine? What is that again? A big category, wolves, dogs, bears, and foxes all belong to this category. Absurd. Can a dog be compared to a fox? The other party interrupted him excitedly, but soon realized that his voice was too high, and then adjusted back to the original cold tone. Don't divert the topic, human. I asked. You, why are you not afraid? Do you mean that dream? Xia Fan was slightly embarrassed. That nightmare. She emphasized. You asked me to do it. That's right. The fox demon didn't deny it, and responded, heaven descending from the sky, the blood moon across the sky, the deceased being reborn, and the evil creature possessing them, aren't these things you fear most? I just need to give some guidance. You will make up for the most horrible scene you have ever seen in your life. Even if you are scared to pee, it's normal. But why don't you get scared? Hello, don't be so blunt, okay? Xia Fan has roughly understood the origin of the dream at this moment. The feeling is that the other party has designed a nightmare scene, adding many horror elements to it, and then the dreamer can play it by himself. In this era, even a meteor shower can be interpreted as an ominous omen, causing panic in the world, not to mention the strange changes that the night sky is stained with blood. But the problem lies in this self-play. The blood moon element is too classic, so that there are too many scenes in Xia Fan's memory that can correspond to it. Coupled with the characteristics of the deceased's resurrection, the most appropriate scene is actually the game Zelda's Breath of the Wild, referred to as Picnic, a scene where the monster refreshes. He can't say that instead of feeling scared, he still has a trace of nostalgia and expectation, right? After all, as soon as the blood moon came out, it meant that weapons and materials could be collected from monsters again. This is probably due to my personal experience, so I am more calm. Xia Fan coughed. Have you ever experienced it? The woman stared at him. How is it possible? These should be the first things I conceived. It seems that she is quite proud of her nightmare design. The world is so big, how do you know that there has never been a similar vision in the world? The other party fell silent, as if thinking about whether he was lying. After a moment, she turned her head, as if she wanted to leave. Wait! Xia Fan hurriedly stopped her. The woman stopped her figure and looked over impatiently. Why are you doing such a thing? I'm not the only one having nightmares tonight. Xia Fan admitted that he was not a special person, and the fox demon was unlikely to come to him alone. Ask you knowingly. She snorted, you plan to become alchemists, right? But eliminating demons is what alchemists often say. In other words, you will be enemies in the future. Why not do this? It makes sense. Is this to wipe out the enemy in the bud? In that case, why don't you just do it? Can sneak into Qingshan town quietly, just bring a dagger, and then change the nightmare into a sweet dream. It is estimated that few people can react before being attacked. That's because you have not yet become alchemists. What? Xia Fan didn't react for a while. Is it hard to understand? You haven't really killed a demon. Killing you just because of a possibility in the future is not a clever way. On the contrary, it will make your slander true. I will not do such a thing. The tone was disdainful. On the contrary, isn't it the most common human behavior to kill wantonly for an inexplicable reason? Xia Fan was dumbfounded. Are the three views of the head demon so normal these days? Do not do to others what you don't want to do. These 8 words are simple to say, but few people can really do it. Even in the previous life where basic education has been popularized, there are many people who are strict in discipline and lenient in discipline. The Privy Council's exam is held once every 3 years. I scare you away with nightmares, which is equivalent to reducing the number of alchemists. The other party shook his ears. Unfortunately, it seems that this trick will not work for you. It took a long time for Xia Fan to take the words, are you not afraid that I will tell other people and let your plot be shattered? This is the most interesting part of you. The fox demon seemed to grin open. The number of alchemists is limited, and those who are scared off are disqualified. Wouldn't your chances of passing the exam be greatly improved? Besides, you tell the truth. When you go out, how many people will believe you? Those guys who were supposed to be scared away? No, they won't admit that they were deceived by a monster with such a simple trick. Maybe they will hate you. Considering these 2 points, are you sure you still want to say it? This guy, is it not the first time to do such a thing? He suddenly realized that perhaps he was not the only one who found something wrong with the nightmare. Well, I won't say it. You admit it quickly. She seemed to have expected this result a long time ago. For human beings, as long as it is beneficial to themselves, the right or wrong of the matter itself is not important, even if the evil is fearful, as long as it is profitable, it's not unavailable, let alone a demon. After speaking, she turned to the window, ready to jump off. Wait! Xia Fan called again. The woman's movements suddenly stopped, and her foot almost slipped out of the window. When she turned her head this time, her expression was already a little angry. If you want to delay time, why can't the demon cooperate? Xia Fan said confidently, to be honest, I have never seen a real demon before, but if the demon are as reasonable, righteous, and polite as you, what's the problem with cooperation? Know the righteousness, know how to be polite. The fox demon looked a little confused. If you don't want to do things that add sin to desire and sin, this is righteous. When I call you, stop. This is respect for the talker, and of course it is a sign of politeness. And ghosts cannot. Communication will not stop harming the common people just because of reason. It is obviously unfair to compare yourself with them, so I must correct your statement. This time the dumb was replaced by the opponent. Naturally, Xia Fan would not let this opportunity pass. He took advantage of the situation and pursued, in addition, you mentioned slander before, which shows that people have certain stereotyped prejudices against demons, but is your view of people a kind of prejudice? It's all unsightly, and there will always be exceptions. You can understand the human language, and you should be taught by someone, so what about this ancestor? Is it the kind of person you say? For a moment, he caught a trace of softening in the opponent's eyes. But soon, the fluctuation disappeared without a trace, as if it was just an illusion. A witty man. Thank you, I brush my teeth every day. The woman snorted coldly, you have said so much, you just want me to help you secretly, so that you can pass the exam more easily. Unfortunately, I am not interested in whether you can pass, and I will not become the alchemist's people cooperate. You better save the time if you have time, come over and chat with me at night. Xia Fan said unhurriedly. Ahem, the fox demon almost didn't get choked. What did you say? The content of the collaboration. He looked frankly, if you have nothing else to do. As for when it comes, you have the final say, just treat it as the rest time after scaring people. The other party still has some doubts about what he heard, chat. God. Since it is a cooperation, of course it won't let you go for nothing. Xia Fan picked up a cloth bag on the table and spread it out in front of her. This is the reward for chatting, what do you think? Pre-wrapped the braised beef from Wei Wushuan before. I have to say that the craftsmanship of the store in this remote town is actually quite good. Not only is the stewed flavor strong, but the beef slices are also very vigorously cut. He originally planned to save some of it until tomorrow. When the candle was lit, Xia Fan noticed that although the opponent was aggressive, he was wearing a crumpled linen. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com may be a monster, her tolerance in the wild is far beyond that of ordinary people, and she doesn't care about the sun, rain, food, and sleep, but that doesn't mean she doesn't like or don't know how to enjoy it, especially if she has obviously been taught by humans. Case. Guru. Xia Fan heard a slight creeping sound. I don't know what to say. The fox demon forced himself to look away. Enough, human, I have no time to listen to your nonsense, keep these things for you to eat. After that, she quickly jumped out of the window, her skill seems to be afraid that he would call out the word wait again. Xia Fan hurriedly climbed onto the table and said to the dark night outside, whether you come or not, I have the beef on the windowsill. Remember to come and get it when you are finished. After a long time, there was no more response in the quiet night. Really left? Xia Fan sat back on the bed with a little regret, still not calmed down. He heard from Master that if you encounter monsters, it is best to avoid them. There are few records about monsters in the folk. The main reason is that they do rarely come into contact with humans, but from another explanation, it may be that they have seen monsters. Of people are dead. It is self-deception to say that there is no tension and guard. In fact, Xia Fan has always been ready to take out the medicine packet from his pocket. In case of any unexpected situation, he can release the spell as soon as possible even though it will play a role in the end. He feels a little bit there is no bottom. But he is more excited and curious than nervous. How to understand the unknown? Obviously close to the unknown in person. This is also the main reason why Xia Fan participated in the examination. Having the opportunity to talk to a fox demon at close range, how could he easily let it go? I just don't know if the other party will come back. That night, in a big tent outside Qingshan town. The curtain was opened with a bang, and two figures, one tall and one short, walked in. Shen Chun, the invigilator standing by the table, looked through the candlelight, and saw that both of them were wearing dark high-collar robes with half-silver masks on their faces, which was the standard dress of Privy Council officials. Among them, the tall man's shoulders are embroidered with 3 red lines, which are already a symbol of the guardian of Fuzhong, which is equivalent to the 3rd-rank master in the 6th department. Obviously the one who came was his long-awaited inspector, Lord Xing Tian. It's just another person. Shen Chun quietly cast his gaze on the short man. He hadn't heard before that there will be 2 inspectors to supervise the exam. Moreover, there was only a white line on the man's black robe, which was equivalent to an alchemist who had just started in grade, and he was not qualified to enter the important place of the examination. But he didn't even speak to his immediate boss, so he decided that he hadn't seen it. Hey, this mask is really suffocated. The first thing the tall man did after entering the tent was to drag the silver mask down and throw it aside. Is there any alcohol to drink? Master Ba, Shen Chun said helplessly, there is only tea here. Hey, the latter took a sip and took a seat at the table. The burly figure made the chair squeak a little, then let's have a pot of tea, let it be cold. And the short man neither took off his mask nor spoke, but sat down next to Tyrant Sing Tian. This means that the two people are at least equal in terms of identity. Shen Chun couldn't help but pay more respect to the latter, even though the other party didn't say anything, he still poured a cup of herbal tea for him. Although the Privy Council is mainly responsible for handling evil and unusual events, it is not the same as the 6 official officials, but to be an official is to be an official, and you must have basic vision, otherwise you don't think you are sinning and you will be arranged to die in the service. Know where to go to justice. Ba Sing Tian directly brought a pot of tea to his mouth and poured it upright. After drinking, he took a long boo, wiped it with his sleeve, and finally asked what was going on. What's the general situation of this exam? Return to your lord, Shen Chun replied immediately. Qingshan town assigned 427 candidates and actually arrived at 401. Everything is going well so far, no abnormalities have occurred. Even there are 400 people in Qingshan town. Ba Sing Tian looked satisfied. It seems that the Privy Council will have many new faces this autumn. With so many people, won't the eligibility criteria be raised? It won't be easy if you don't lower it. He shook his head. The impact of the locust plague last year is still there. Qi State and Gaoguo are ready to move, and people are needed everywhere. The above also put a lot of pressure. This has already involved national politics, and Shen Chun nodded if he couldn't speak more. The more the catastrophe, the more frequent the evil spirits appear, and sometimes the harm they cause is even greater than the war and fighting, and these require alchemists to deal with them. How can people who can't even pass the assessment expect them to make a difference in the face of these major threats? In addition, the cost of training an alchemist is not low, and he does not think that lowering the standard can really solve the problem. Ba Sing Tian didn't talk more about this issue either. He pointed to a spread-out list on the table. Those crossed-out names are those who have been eliminated. Yes. Shen Chun replied, so far there are 9 in total. 9? Was it eliminated on the first day? The short man finally opened his mouth, his voice unexpectedly light, not too loud in terms of age. At this age can I be on the same level as Master Ba? Shen Chun suddenly became a little curious about the identity of the other party. The reason is written in the remarks. They were eager to find clues, and spent all their money in the afternoon, and did not notice the meaning of money until dinner. For the other person, they could not last the 7th day hungry, so I chose to abandon the exam. Guy without perseverance. Ba Sing Tian commented, I don't have one, I can grab someone else. If they have the strength of yours, of course. Shen Chun smiled. The lower officials feel that they can give up the exam by themselves, and they are quite self-knowing. Those who want to hold on will only let themselves. The failure is even more ugly. The short man picked up the list and flipped through it, so these people with money behind are facing elimination. Master Hui is easier to be eliminated than others. Compared with answering Ba Sing Tian, Shen Chun took his questions more seriously. When performing tasks, the alchemist often encounters unexpected situations, only reasonable. Only those who make full use of the resources at hand will have the opportunity to turn danger into a breeze. Really? But this person only had half a bag of silver at the beginning, wouldn't it be unfair? Shen Chun looked at the position of the opponent's finger, and found that the word Xiafan was filled in that column. Compared with the 12 tails in a row of other candidates, his less than 50 tails are indeed particularly eye-catching. We can only guarantee that the rules are generally fair, not to mention whether the preparations are adequate. It also represents the degree of attention. He paused. In addition, this person is not less expensive than others, which proves that he is not aware of himself. Being in an extremely disadvantaged position, it is normal to be eliminated. The short man nodded, as if agreeing to his statement. It was a pity that Shen Chunla felt that he still had a little impression of this examinee named Xia Fan. After all, examinees who don't have $12 of silver are extremely rare now, and it is difficult to notice it. At that time, when everyone sneered in a low voice, he was not affected in the slightest, and his response was quite mature, and his temperament was commendable. But in just one night, he spent a lot of money on his money. Even the dinner was the most expensive one, as if he didn't know that he had only half of others' possessions, and he had no vigilance at all. Can only say that he looked away. What do these incompetent people have to discuss? Ba Sing Tian waved his hand. Why not talk about the top 3 candidates this time? Who do you think they will be? The short man also turned the list to the top. Shen Chun noticed that the time he stayed on each page had obviously become longer, as if he wanted to write down the names of these candidates. No accident, Fei Nian of the Fei family, Fang Xiandao of the Fang family, Luo Qing of the Luo family, will be the top 3 in the Qingshan town examination room. Shen Chun reported in one sentence. One family. Ba Sing Tian gave a playful smile. You are also a qualified invigilator. The adults are rewarded. Shen Chun bowed his head and invigilated the examination for many years. He already understood that the examination is not only for the selection of talents, but also for the distribution of benefits. What's more, these 3 people are really talented, and they are exposed to the cultivation of qi earlier than the other candidates, and their performance is unlikely to be worse, and it is difficult to pick out the thorns inside and outside. Of course, the final result has to be determined by the adults after the exam. Is there no one from a family background? The short man suddenly asked. Don't talk about the top 3, even if it is within the top 10 or the top 20. This. Shen Chun hesitated. He seemed to hear some dissatisfaction in the other party's tone. The ranking of the list does not represent the actual results. In the end, it must be based on the performance of the exam. Haha, it's normal. Ba Sing Tian interrupted him with a smile. Think about it, if you are all good seedlings, one is from a poor background, he can only be literate at the age of 10, while the other can read and write at the age of 5. Feeling angry, which one has greater prospects? If the former is stronger than the latter, it would be too worthy of the word genius. The short man didn't answer any more, as if lost in thought. The inspector cleared his throat and stood up. This is something important to order, and Shen Chun quickly stood up, clasping both hands. I don't care about the ranking of the exam, you can do it right away. Ba Sing Tian said with his back to him. Compared to the scholar exam, the more important thing is to eliminate hidden dangers. You should know that the Privy Council sent us to supervise. Purpose. Shen Chun's heart beat, he licked his lips, and then tentatively said, because of the listener? Hey, you really know it. Ba Xingtian's tone suddenly sank. 10 years ago, the invigilator just knew the word is a felony. The officials have passed over. It's okay, there is no secret that will never be revealed unless everyone who knows it is dead. Tyrant Sing Tian waved his hand, and returned to the tone he didn't care about before. It must be tight-lipped, and always be on guard. There is no such good thing in the world. If you find anything unusual, good or bad, you must report it to me immediately. Yes, my lord. Shen Chun bowed his head and promised. But I only heard the term listener mentioned by others. I don't know what his characteristics are and how he should be distinguished. I wonder if you can give me more detailed clues. Nothing. Because the listener is not a person, but a kind of person. Ba Sing Tian picked up a talisman, raised it casually, and then a breeze passed by, and the worms around disappeared without a trace. Shen Chun realized that it was a soundproof charm. In fact, I don't know much about the listener. Only the 4 heads of the Privy Council understand the details. You, can't you? I only know that they can hear some unbelievable things, such as secrets that no one in this world should know, or spells that have never been seen before. Tyrant Xingtian slowly said, but more, it's completely incomprehensible babble. This is where the listener's name comes from. Raving. It's the kind of words that don't matter if you look at it alone. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com is connected but has no meaning. So they usually don't live long, either being murdered or falling into madness, but before they go mad, they are enough to cause amazing the destruction. If I had an uncontrolled listener, what will happen? Tyrant Xingtian glanced at him deeply. The country is in danger of subjugation. Shen Chun shuddered involuntarily. He started to regret asking about it. Although anyone who can perceive qi may become a listener, the possibility is the highest between the ages of 10 and 20 after all. Most alchemists can steadily grasp the absorption and use of qi during this period, so the Privy Council will start staring at Shikao. Ba Xingtian stared at him. Do you understand now? Yes. The subordinates must do their best. Shen Chun bowed. Don't worry so much. The inspector patted his shoulder with a fan-like palm. I just follow the usual practice. As far as I know, there has been no suspected listener in the last 10 years, so only then will the ban on news be relaxed. Marking returns to marking, and the Shikao still has to concentrate on presiding. After hearing this, I was afraid that it would be difficult to ignore it anymore. Shen Chun smiled bitterly. The only thing he was grateful for was that he had passed away and he was unlikely to go crazy one day. It's the short guy. He couldn't help but glanced at the other person according to the age of the tone. This person is likely to be within 20 years of age, clearly in a high-risk range, from start to finish, but there is no reaction at all, as if he does not care about the listener. Such mentality cannot even be described as calm and self-assured. Who is he? After hesitating for a while, Shen Chun finally pressed this question into his heart. Xia Fan woke up when the sun shone into the window the next morning. Without the bumps of the carriage or the disturbing mosquitoes, he slept very sweetly this time, and the fatigue caused by the previous running all the way was gone. Even the fox demon that appeared last night was like a dream and many more. Xia Fan jumped off the bed, jumped onto the old wooden table, and looked out the window with the probe. Then he couldn't help but cocked his mouth. I saw that the plate on the windowsill was empty. It seems that it is not my own illusion. Since the braised beef is taken away, does that mean that the other party has accepted the agreement? He suddenly looked forward to tonight. Putting on the robe and going to the well in the backyard to wash briefly, Xia Fan came to the lobby and asked for a steamed water for 2 silver. I can't blame him for not saving, since he was able to get breath and enlighten him, his appetite has become much larger. I didn't see how long my body was, but my food turned over several times. As long as the meal is not full, the body function and the efficiency of entraining air will be significantly reduced. This is the same for other alchemists. Xia Fan attributed it to the fact that energy conservation is always expressed in strange ways in some places. Good morning, Brother Xia. Someone suddenly shouted behind him. Even if he doesn't look back, he can still hear who the other party is. Sure enough, Wei Wushuan's familiar face quickly appeared in front of him. Do you mind if I sit next to you? It's okay. Xia Fan blinked. It seems that this fellow villager did not take his behavior of stealing beef into his heart. Put down with him, there is a large breakfast, in addition to kai watu, rice porridge, tofu brain and pancakes are also everything. Xia Fan can be regarded as knowing how the other party's slightly fat figure came from in terms of the consumption of the alchemist. It is really not that easy to get fat. Brother Xia, you are right. I thought about it all night and decided. Wei Wushuan did not start eating immediately, but said seriously. What did you decide? The office of the Privy Council is not suitable for me. He paused. I'm not saying that it is not good to kill the people and protect the people. It's just that when I think of facing terrible evil monsters, I even eat food. No less than. Hey! Xia Fan glanced at the rich breakfast on the table. Then what is this? The reference is only my father's persecution. I have not made the corresponding awareness. Even if I pass the exam, it will not be any better. So I plan to stay in the tea house or hotel during the exam until the end of the exam. Speaking of later, Wei Wuxian's tone became more and more brisk. You don't have to fight with people, and you don't have to run to dig ghost fire graves late at night. As long as you persist until the last day, you will be able to explain to his father after returning. Of course, without your awakening from Brother Xia, I couldn't make up my mind so quickly. Even if I was regarded as a coward by Xian Tai, I would like to say thank you in person, coward. I haven't said that. Xia Fan interrupted with a smile. On the contrary, your courage is not small anymore. Brother Xia doesn't need to comfort me. It's not comfort. In my opinion, the courage needed to be honest with oneself is no less than that of facing evil. Withdrawal has nothing to do with courage. It is nothing more than being a rich man or a low-level alchemist in a remote place. It has a better future. Wei Wuxian stared at him for a long time before chuckling. To be honest, there are not many people who think like you. Once hired by the Privy Council, no matter how young the alchemist is, he is still an official, and the businessman is a businessman after all. But I think, you are not without reason. As if letting go, he picked up the pancake and took a bite. Brother Xia, if you haven't taken the exam, come to the big bowl food shop to find me. I said I would treat you to a good meal. Xia Fan rolled his eyes. Should you not wish me smooth sailing at this time? I also think, but this assessment is far from being as simple as it seems. Wei Wuvai said, someone asked about the situation in Qingshan town yesterday. This place does have a wildfire site, but the scale is small. It's pitiful. According to common sense, if you want hundreds of candidates to collect a whole bottle of spiritual fire, you need at least a mass grave. However, I heard people say that there are dozens of graves scattered in that place. This is too little. Xia Fan said in surprise. Indeed, even if there is a fire in every tomb, it is only enough for hundreds of years. If this continues, conflict will be inevitable. The fellow sighed. Perhaps this is the examiner's original intention, not to fight with others. Don't want to get the qualifications. It's just that it's too unfair for the disciples who are not from the family. In addition, the 7 days of food and accommodation expenses are also constraints. Although I think Xian Tai has already seen this point, but you only have half the funds of others at the beginning. Passing through is not limited by your ability. Don't force yourself. Indeed. Xia Fan said frankly, I originally planned to spend 3 days to solve the problem, but now it is not safe to look at 3 days. If the news is correct, this battle is likely to continue until the last minute of the exam. Unfortunately, I can't help you further. Wei Wuxian did not mean to conceal or evade. After all, the relationship between the two is still shallow. The other thanked the other person. He took the risk to live in the wild and saved money for Xia Fan to complete the exam. He could not do this kind of self-interest. 2. It doesn't matter, your willingness to share information with me is enough in return. There is also the braised beef, Xia Fangzhen said. If yesterday, I would have nothing good to do, but today it would not be hopeless. Do you have a way to raise money? The other party asked in surprise. Probably. Xia Fan nodded. By the way, did you have nightmares last night? Nightmare? Wei Wuxian took a mouthful of tofu brains. I don't have an impression. I basically don't dream. Xia Fan's expression froze, and suddenly he felt a little unsure. Let me change the question. If you had a nightmare and dreamed of a blood-red moon and monsters all over the ground, would you be afraid? Wei Wuxian thought for a while. Of course it will. That's a sight only in purgatory. If I'm in such a scene, I'm afraid I will faint directly. Isn't it so exaggerated? Xia Fan was stunned, but it was just a dream. Dreams are very important signs. He said seriously, although I don't dream too much, but I also know that dreams are extensions of consciousness. This is especially true for enlightened people. You must not take the manifestation of dreams lightly. So that's it. Xia Fan suddenly. This is a world where consciousness can have an effect on matter, which means that dreams are no longer ordinary deep brain activities. Simply measuring dreams from the degree of fear is equivalent to using past common sense to think about new problems. That's good. He smiled relievedly. I just wanted to try it before, but now that you say so, I think I'm pretty sure. Really? Wei Wuxian put down the pancake in his hand. Can you show me something? Oh, I don't want to take advantage, but I'm very curious. Xia Fan pointed behind him. Come with me. While it is still early. Qingshan Town, in front of the suspension bridge connecting the inside and outside of the mountain. Xia Fan waited for a candidate with a suitcase in a hurry. This brother, please stay. He stepped forward and arched his hands. I am the candidate of Fenghua County, Xia Fan. The other side glanced at him suspiciously, then slowly stopped. Chu, Yuz Hu. Good meeting. Xia Fan looked back at the suspension bridge behind him, pretending to be regretful. After crossing this bridge, the exam will fail. Probably mentioned the pain point, and the other person's expression was obviously a little unhappy. What does this have to do with you? I don't want to laugh at you, nor do I want to ask why you left. Xia Fan said in a gentle tone, the reason why I am waiting here is just to make a bond with you. Say something straight. I hope you can lend me the unused money to help me. Are you crazy? The man asked in disbelief, why should I help you? If I can pass the exam, I will definitely return it 10 times in the future. Xia Fan ignored the irony in his words and treated it as if he hadn't heard it. Even if I fail, I will pay back the borrowed part and use it as a loan. For proof, I wonder what do you think? After that, he took out a piece of paper from his pocket. This kind of palm-sized paper was used to make talisman, and now he has written it as an IOU. The other party looked at him for a moment, and then laughed out loud. You think you are a genius of the Luo family? If it can pass HET, what do you use to guarantee this? The passing rate of the exam is not low. That's not your turn, get out. Xia Fan turned sideways and made a please gesture. The candidate surnamed Chu glared at him, and walked on the suspension bridge without looking back. Since we happen to happen, I also warn you that this place is not quite right. It is better to leave early if there are 2 brushes, so as not to lose your life. Brother Xia, is this your method? Seeing him walking away, Wei Wuxian appeared from behind the hidden tree and asked with a weird expression. That's right. Xia Fan didn't change his expression. Borrowing money in Qingshan Town. I am afraid it is a bit difficult. This is not borrowing money. He squinted his eyes and looked into the distance. You continue to hide, someone is coming. Wei Wuxian had to shrink back. The same applies to the second and third candidates. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com, but the fourth one is different. He took away Xia Fan's IOU and handed over 50 taels of silver to the latter. Followed by the 7th and 10th. Wei Wuxian, who was observing all this secretly behind the tree, was stunned. He didn't quite understand why some people would lend Xia Fan money based on one side. What is even more unclear is that Xia Fan was able to wait for so many people who gave up the exam at the entrance of the suspension bridge until the next day of the exam. How did he know that these people were leaving Qingshan Town? Until the 36th person, the situation changed again. Sorry, you're late. The man spread his hands. The Fei family bought my money, medicine packs, and papers. Now I have nothing except 2 sets of clothes. Buy? What do they use? Gold. The other party bluntly said. They said that as long as I give the voucher to the servant waiting outside the town, I can immediately get the same amount of gold leaf. Really? Then I wish you a smooth return. After bidding farewell to this person, Xia Fan shouted at Wei Wuxuan's position, "Come out, we can go back to town. Don't wait any longer." The latter asked, poking out his head. "Well, it doesn't make sense to wait any longer. The candidates who will cross the bridge next are probably as penniless as the person." Xia Fan looked up at the sky. "Is there a reaction before an hour? You deserve to be a disciple of the family." "I don't understand." Wei Wuxuan ran over and couldn't wait. He happily turned the heavy money bag in his hand. "You can ask. You said this is not a loan, what is it?" "This." Xia Fan smiled slightly, "This is called venture capital. Risk, investment." Wei Wuxuan couldn't help repeating it. "Yes, that's the problem. If it weren't in Qingshan town, would it be a lot of silver?" Wei Wuxuan shook his head, "Sometimes my shop can make so much in a day." "Abominable local tyrant." Xia Fan curled his lips, "It's as simple as that. For those who decide to quit the exam, this little money is meaningless, and for those who continue to take the exam, every 2 silvers are precious, and both sides everyone knows this fact. Because of this, the offer has a foundation. Regardless of the momentary gains and losses, focusing on long-term high-return transactions is what those people do. Even if I disappear afterwards, they can accept this loss innocently, but what if I succeed?" Speaking of this, Xia Fan didn't explain it anymore, because he saw Wei Wuxuan's eyes lit up. Obviously he has grasped the key here. If you succeed, you will not only get 10 times the silver, but also the friendship of an alchemist. Even the alchemist who entered the Privy Council for the first time was a serious official. Compared with such a lucrative return, the risk of a few silver ounces is not worth mentioning. Not everyone can measure the pros and cons of this, but there are more people who ask, and there are always a few who have high enough vision and don't care about such a small amount of money. Wei Wuxuan continued thinking about it, and found that there was a deeper meaning hidden in it. That is the same amount of silver, which has different values in the eyes of different people at different times. For example, in his father's treasury, a lot of deposits were piled up, and some cash boxes even accumulated a thick layer of dust. They have almost no sense of existence for the big bowls of grain shops, but they can't ask for some people, such as a new restaurant, or that is eager to expand. Lending them a small amount of money is very likely to be exchanged. Prosperous profits. The same seems to be the case for loan sharks in the market, but there is an essential difference between the two. The latter is just taking advantage of the danger and taking advantage of others, and you will never stop if you don't smash people, while the former focuses on the future and seeks a win-win situation. It is much easier to accept than greedy usury in terms of its ability to take risks. What's more, risks are not impossible to avoid. For example, attract more people, share the cost of lending evenly, and even if the investment fails, the loss can be greatly reduced. The more he thought about it, Wei Wuxuan became more excited, and even his hands trembled slightly. The potential of this transaction is probably far above selling food. Maybe this principle can be used in a business. He couldn't help but excited. Was originally something that came out of business. Xia Fan smiled and did not answer. During the time that the other party was pondering, he had already counted the money in his hand. A total of 7 people took away his eas and exchanged them for 21 taels in total, which was more than enough to live in the house. Up. Regrettably, the phase reaction was quite rapid. They discovered that there was a small-scale withdrawal among the candidates within 2 hours and immediately took the most beneficial countermeasures for them. We must know that there are more than 400 candidates in Qingshan town. The time for getting up and acting are all different. It is normal that there are many people on the street, and you can still notice this change in the crowd. The disciples of the family are indeed well prepared. Otherwise, if he saves more money, he might be able to buy a bottle of spirit fire directly from someone else. Brother Xia, I know about venture capital. Wei Wuxuan also gradually calmed down from his reverie. It is indeed a good plan, but if there are not so many choices, its effect may be greatly reduced. You are again. How do you know that a group of candidates will give up the exam this morning? This is a personal secret. Xia Fan said relaxedly. Can't you say it? Wei Wuxian showed a look that he wanted to know anyway. No. Brother Xia, 10 meals. Send me a restaurant will not work. Has money in his hand, then it's time to think about business. Xia Fan went back to the tea house and used a couple of silver to ask about the situation of the back mountain from the second onet. Here was indeed a flat ground on the mountainside with some scattered ancient tombs. These tomb bags have existed for at least 100 years, and you can often see sparkling fire in summer and autumn. In addition, there is a spiraling uphill road, but the road is overgrown with trees, which is extremely difficult to walk, except for the hunters in Kai Town. Few people go deep into the green hills. Where does that road lead? Xia Fan cared a little bit. Theoretically, this kind of mountain road was formed by footsteps over the years, and a few hunters alone should not be able to do this. I don't know about that, Xiao Er shook his head. The mountains on the back of Qingshan town can't be seen at a glance. It's impossible for this road to cross the mountains and go around from the other side, right? 89 is a dead end. Okay, I'm fine for the time being. Xia Fan threw him half of shredded silver again, a braised beef bag, and delivered it to the door of my room. Okay. Then he looked at Wei Wuxian. I'm going to visit Huishan. You don't want to follow this time, right? The latter shook his head quickly. I have decided not to participate in the examination, and Brother Xia is going by myself. I will stay in the tea house. If I happen to hear any useful clues, I might be able to help Brother Xia. Thank you. Xia Fan drank the tea, then turned and left. Crossed the tic-tac-toe and walked hundreds of meters more, and the small town was already behind. Although some earthen houses can still be seen here, they are as dilapidated as ruins. Either the roof has collapsed or only half of the wall remains. The weeds on the road have also become denser, and the shade of the trees invades the road area, and the wind blowing around is much cooler. The cliffs that originally seemed to be far apart are now pressed on top of their heads. In another world, this unnamed mountain may not be worth mentioning, but here, anyone who wants to climb over it will be crisscrossed by vines. Retreat from the thorns. If Xiao Er is right, the road under his feet will soon split into two, as if it was split by a cliff head-on. At this time, Xia Fan suddenly heard a quarrel. He raised his eyebrows slightly in surprise, and followed the sound forward. I saw a group of candidates forming a group at the fork in the road, yelling at something. Standing opposite them was a group of people in white. Is limited by dyeing techniques. There are not many solid color clothes in this era, and white is one of the rarer ones. This time, wearing white clothes during the exam, and often acting in groups, Xia Fan had only one impression, and that was the Fei family disciple. 7 or 8 of them lined up in a row, just blocking the way to the mountainside. Among them, the heads have sword eyebrows, star eyes, high nose, and thin lips, both in appearance and aura are extraordinary. Why don't you let everyone pass by? This is a Dakashi test, not your Fei family's backyard. Don't you be afraid that we will report it to the invigilator. If you insist on doing this, don't blame us for being rude. The leading man remained unmoved. I have said very clearly. According to observations last night, there are not many spiritual fire spots in the field. Fighting against each other will only make the collection efficiency lower. Instead of wasting time. When it comes to meaningless looting, it's better to line up at the beginning, and it's not too late for you to go after the phase collection. Can't even we go there? A woman in a blue robe suddenly walked out of the crowd, and the double feather embroidery on her shoulders had already indicated the identity of the visitor. Yuzhu Luo's house is here. Someone whispered to the ear canal. Xia Fan discovered that the other party was the little girl who jumped onto the exam table and made everyone on the scene obediently listen. It turned out to be Miss Luoqing, Long Yang. The man nodded and signaled, I heard your name when I was in Jiangyi. Literacy means learning the law. Talent is amazing, and no one in Yuzu can be the second. It's just a compliment. Fame never spreads for no reason, even if it is rumors, there must be an unusual reason, I think so. This guy can really talk. Xia Fan sneered, holding a star's face, plus a serious compliment, which is not small for any opposite sex. As expected, the woman called Luo Qing smiled slightly, thank you. But you haven't answered my question yet. Yes. But we will only collect one day. The other party stretched out a finger solemnly, no matter how many can be collected, I will leave this place tomorrow, and will not set foot here before the end of the exam. Only one day. Only one day. You can make your own arrangements for the rest of the time. If necessary, we can even assign someone to help you stay here. The leader of the Fei family glanced contemptuously at the crowd behind her. If you disagree, then you can only compete on the basis of strength. Unfortunately, this scholarship test does not value who is strong or weak. Wouldn't you feel unwilling to let those mice that fish in troubled water steal the spirit fire? Luo thought slightly for a while before nodding, okay. The crowd suddenly exploded. What does this mean? A family united to bully our poor candidates. Fei's family a day, Luo's family a day, Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com, and there is Fang's family. Each of you takes up one day, what shall we do? Don't talk nonsense, let's go together, I don't believe he can stop it. Don't be funny. The man suddenly shouted, shocking the crowd, even so, you still have 3 days left, don't you? This is the Kiguo not a place for everyone to get confused. Isn't it a matter of course that only those who are capable can become alchemists? The strength is not as good as that of human beings, and it's ridiculous to want to take advantage of the chaos to get spiritual fire. Instead of shouting here, it's better to think about how to get the priority of the day. He paused, with one hand behind his back and the other hand forward. Of course, if you want to prove yourself now, I'm always welcome. When Luo turned slightly to leave and passed by Xia Fan gave her a look with interest. I didn't expect you to agree so simply. I'm not afraid that people here will pass it on. Luo Jialian and Fei Ji, do you have the courage to fight? It's you. Luo Qing also seemed to remember him, and put on a look of helplessness. The little girl is not a big figure, she fell in the face of Fei Nian, the first young man in the Fei family. What's so strange? Xia Fan blinked in surprise. He thought that people who were praised as geniuses had more or less arrogance, and didn't want to lose others by themselves. It was the first to give in like her. See you. If they were already in a group before I got here, then things might turn around. But now it seems that Fenian was right. Luo chuckled lightly and waved goodbye to him. Also, no matter how bad the order is, it is better than no order. Aroused by the sentiment, someone finally couldn't help but took out the medicine packet and paper from the Fei family disciple. That is the preparation to cast the spell. Xia Fan has also used alchemy, or it is because of practice that he can completely reconstruct his cognition, but this is the first time that people use magical battles. In this world, a complete spell is usually divided into 3 levels, that is, what you think, what you are tied to, and what you do. The 3 are combined to give full play to the power of the spell. In popular terms, it is to first conceive the magic technique you want to use in your mind, and then use the relevant medicinal materials as a guide, and finally show the process of its change. This is also the most incredible part of his new cognition. Qi not only responds to the surgeon's will, but also changes with the external part of the Qi, just like a stone thrown into the lake, making ripples on the water, and finally turns spells into reality. Master said that human beings are Qi generation, and it is normal to respond to people's calls. The so-called unity of nature and man is exactly this principle, but Xia Fan knows that he cannot be satisfied with this explanation. What is Qi, why thought can be mapped into reality, and how far this mapping can reach, there are too many doubts to be answered. Perhaps it would be extremely difficult to find an accurate answer in such a world, and there would never be an answer, but he could not persuade himself to give up further exploration anyway. A man in a green shirt squeezed out a small group of black things from the medicine bag and clamped it on his fingertips. At the same time, he pulled a piece of paper filled with spells in his hand. Xia Fan squinted his eyes for a while, only to find that the other party was holding it. What came out was a cicada shell. Sun Chu Gui Chen, hurry up! Following his whistle, a scream that pierced his forehead suddenly exploded, shocking all the unsuspecting figures present, revealing a grin of pain. Using the cicada shell as a guide, it creates a short and huge howling sound, which is the effect of this spell. The purpose of the Tsing Yi man's fight was to use his voice to frighten his opponent, and then take the opportunity to rush through phase defense. It's a pity that this is not a rare alchemy. He didn't hide it at all when he took the medicinal materials. Even Xia Fan could notice that it was a cicada shell, not to mention the Fei family disciple opposite. It's just that compared to Xia Fan's coping style of covering his ears, the white-clothed man's reaction was even more unrestrained, just throwing out a talisman to completely resist the howling sound. The effect of magic spells depends not only on personal strength, but also on the environment in which they are used. For the open field, the power of noise is not limited. The man in the blue shirt who tried to rush over had no time to stop. He was slashed on the shoulder with a sword, and suddenly fainted. "Brother Yan! What are you waiting for? Give it to me!" With the roar, a few people rushed out of the crowd, but the result was even worse this time. Before the spell was released, they were knocked to the ground by wooden swords one after another while they were touching the medicine packet and raising paper. The first time the alchemist duel saw Xia Fan's mouth twitching, when there were more than a dozen people lying down there was only one feeling left in his heart: that's it. I have to say that the actual combat experience of this group of people is not even as good as that of street hooligans. Although the spells need 3 links to support their full power, 1 or 2 less is not ineffective. However, in order to pursue the maximum effect, they basically complete the entire process at a glance, which undoubtedly gives the Fei family enough counter space. More than that, few people concealed or confuses during the operation, and even for a long time they couldn't get the medicinal materials they wanted, and they simply poured the medicine package upside down. Everyone is a newcomer who hasn't gotten started, and there are only so many kinds of spells. Seeing the medicinal materials is basically equivalent to knowing the other party's plan. Even if 1 or 2 of the magic arts are released, it is difficult to pose much threat to the Fei family's disciples. On the contrary, the candidates who have stood the longest on the field are those who have given up the surgery. With the strong physique brought by the perennial qi, they can only rely on wooden swords and kicks to fight with the Fei family for several rounds. Of course, one side is the disciple of the family who are accustomed to collective action, and the other is a mass of loose sand, and the final result cannot be changed by any play style. Especially after Fei Nian, the leader of the Fei family, said that he would throw the loser to the opposite side of the suspension bridge. Crossing the suspension bridge is equivalent to leaving the boundary of Qingshan town, which is equivalent to failing the exam. In other words, Shinichi Shinobu can also look for other opportunities, and being knocked out here, Shikao ends here. After a quarter of an hour, there was no one in the crowd who dared to step forward. If they were already in a group before I got here, there might be a chance for things to turn around. But now it seems that Fenian is right. Luo's words suddenly sounded in Xia Fan's ear. So that was the case, he said in his heart. This is probably the reason why the Luo family genius turned around and left the group of people in front of her is not worthy of her to confront the Fei family. If they can go together, not only will the Fei family be unable to stop it, nor will the knocked out people lose their qualifications, but they have not done so, just because the group of people had the idea of fishing in troubled waters from the beginning. Xia Fan thought of this and walked forward. Do you want to try it too? Fenian frowned slightly, put his hand on the hilt again. I said that once you fall, the exam will end early. There was a commotion in the crowd. Don't be afraid, he is just scaring you. With us here, he dare not move you at all. As long as you can defeat Fenian, we will rush over together. Xia Fan smiled, spread his hands to Fenian as he walked, and signaled that there was nothing in his palm, and Fenian did not move, so he waited for him to step forward. The atmosphere of the scene froze for a while, everyone's eyes were focused on the two of them. Such a close confrontation made a new round of battle seem to be about to start. Fenian's expression has also become more solemn. The reason why he didn't act first was entirely out of the need to maintain his own image. As the leader of the new generation in the Fei family, he should be calm and personable at all times. This person is different from the others, he vaguely realizes. Neither would take out the medicine packet in a big manner and engrave the attacking intention on his face, nor would he have the prudence intention of a confrontation. He seems to be full of flaws, but it makes it difficult to grasp the timing of countermeasures. This is the first time Fenian has seen it in her peers. What will he do next? Is it to draw a sword, or is it a more direct fist? Maybe it was a wrong choice to wait for him to shoot first. Finan unconsciously grasped the hilt of the sword tightly. At this moment, Xia Fan moved. He turned around and walked towards the other side of the fork as if he hadn't noticed the atmosphere around him. Fenian, who had already raised his aura to the apex, almost didn't get choked. This feeling was as if he swung his weapon at the target with all his strength but threw himself into the air. He covered his mouth and coughed a few times before surging his heart. The blood pressure is controlled. What the is this guy? At the same time, the group of onlookers behind him also exploded. Hey, where are you going? Come back soon. Do you still want spirit fire? Hey, I knew he was a coward. How can I have the courage to break the wrist with the Fei family? We are still fighting for you at a loss, why are you so embarrassed? The candidates shouted outrageously, completely treating Xia Fan as a betrayer. I want to get the spirit fire by myself. Xia Fan yelled back angrily, what's the matter of shouting there? I didn't say that I want to go there, can't I look around the scenery? Look, see the scenery. I have probably never seen such a cheeky answer, and everyone was stunned for a while. Even Fenian was no exception. He looked at Xia Fan, who was going straight away, and couldn't even say a word of refutation or sarcasm. After all, there is really no stipulation in the examination regulations that you cannot watch the scenery. While everyone was still stunned, Xia Fan had already bypassed the bottom of the cliff and entered the dense forest. The road that was originally clear suddenly became narrow and secret, probably because no one had walked it for too long, and the weeds and shrubs had been connected under his feet. He needed to clear the way with a wooden sword to discern the direction of the mountain road. According to Xiao Er, this fork road will follow this green hill all the way up, and few people in the town have seen its end. Half an hour later, Xia Fan stopped panting. Walking in a real forest is by no means an easy task, let alone the annoying vines under your feet. The dew that can't disperse in the low grass is enough to make people uncomfortable. After walking for a while, his trousers and shoes have been soaked. Reading www.youcanshoe. Every step of calm is like stepping in the mud. There are also mosquitoes. Mosquitoes in the mountains do not come out day and night, but the kind that come out and buzz in broad daylight. If it weren't for the key ability to expel small insects, he felt that he would not be able to survive this time. The exploration proved that there are no cemeteries or grave bags around this Panchen road, and there is little hope of finding another way to obtain spiritual fire. At the same time, he also confirmed that this road was definitely not opened by hunters in the town. Although it has been covered by weeds, its actual width and flatness are even comparable to the main road in Qingshan town compared to the road leading to it. The fork road halfway up the mountain, this one looks like the real main road instead. Why would anyone want to build such a spacious road on the mountain? Even with the help of alchemists, it is a huge project. What is even more strange is why Panchen Road, which was built with a lot of energy, is now abandoned. It's a pity that with his personal ability, it is impossible to find out. Just when Xia Fan was about to go back, the wooden sword used to push out the weeds suddenly hit something and made a muffled sound. That touch is neither a vine nor a stubborn stone protruding from the road. He whispered softly, knelt down, and pushed aside the grass. I saw a heavily decayed wooden square half buried in the soil, about 4 fingers wide, and its length was difficult to estimate for a while. To his surprise, this piece of wood with obvious planing marks did not seem to have been carelessly lost here. Almost every half a meter, you could see a piece of wood dowels inserted into the wooden square to secure it. Securely fixed to the ground. On the wooden side, there are countless long indentations. Although some parts have been damaged by insects after aging, it can still be seen that it has carried many heavy objects. This is actually a track.